Morning, Derek. Can you hear us okay?
Morning again. Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you.
To get in.
Are we good to go? Can everyone in the room hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. Okay, so are we good to go?
Yeah, that's us ready, Chris.
Okay, so is the live stream started?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the January Cairngorms National Park Authority Planning Committee meeting. For those members of the public joining us today, either virtually or in person, I am Chris Beattie, the convener of the CNPA Planning Committee. Today's meeting will also be streamed live on the Cairngorms YouTube channel. Before we go any further with the meeting, I'm going to ask the clerk to the board to run a roll call.
Morning. Could I just check through the roll call? Chris Beattie,
Good morning.
Jiva Blackett. Believe she might be attending slightly later.
Okay.
Sandy Bremner,
Morning, present.
Jackie Brereton,
Hello, here.
Peter Cosgrove,
Present.
Kenny Deans, Paul Gibb,
Here.
Hannah Grist.
Yeah, morning.
Russell Jones has tendered his apologies. John Kirk,
Morning, here.
Bill Lobban,
Here.
Lauren McCallum,
Here.
Eleanor McIntosh,
Morning.
Fiona McLean,
Morning.
Steve Micklewright,
Yeah, I'm here.
Duncan Miller,
Morning.
Anne Ross,
Good morning.
Derek Ross,
Here.
and Michael Williamson.
Present.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, to move the business forward effectively, please keep your questions succinct and to the point, focus firmly on the clarification of technical or planning issues. Once we've moved into the discussion phase of an application, it would be helpful if members could indicate at an appropriate point if you're minded to put forward any proposal regarding the officer's recommendations. For members in the room, please raise your real hand to indicate that you want to speak. And for those of us joining online, please raise your virtual hand. For those of us joining virtually, please make sure that your microphones are muted unless you're speaking to reduce feedback. And on that little point there, Lauren, I can't actually see you on the screen. Whereabouts are you? Oh, there you are. Okay, I didn't recognise you with the hat on. Sorry, Lauren. So should a member wish to pull together an amendment to the motion on any of the items today, a breakout room is available and the details are on your board menu, where you'll be joined by Peter Ferguson, who's managed to brave the conditions and turn up at the office today. Now, before we go any further, though, because of the weather conditions, there is the potential for power outages and broadband to go down at some point. So we have the option to suspend standing orders, but that's a decision that we need to make at the beginning of the meeting. Maybe Peter, you can explain that for us, please.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Yes, Standing Order 7 requires a minimum quorum of 10. There are, I think, 9 members in person in the room today. So if there were to be an outage, we would fall below quorum and no further business could be conducted. Standing Order 7, though, does allow the requirement for 10 to be suspended. There would need to be a motion made at this stage while the meeting is still quorate. And if the numbers reduced below 7 is the absolute minimum needed. So with the 9 members in the room, we would still be quorate unless any members had declared an interest in a particular matter. And I should say that if any members do have declarations of interest, they don't count for the purposes of a vote to suspend standing orders. So there would need to be a motion to suspend this particular standing order.
Okay, so are we happy to put forward that motion? Can I put forward that motion that we could suspend standing orders? Mike?
Yeah, I'm happy to second you on that, Chris.
Thank you very much, Mike. Are we agreed? I'm not hearing anyone.
Agreed.
Right, thank you very much, Paul. Okay, so with no apologies, item number 2, minutes of the previous meeting on the 13th of December 2024 and matters arising not covered elsewhere. Can I ask if the committee is content with the accuracy of the meeting, minutes of the meeting from the 13th of December? Everyone happy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And do any members wish to raise anything? I'm not seeing anything from online either. No, okay. Right, so we'll move on. I'll move a motion to take the draft minutes from our confidential session on the 30th of December at the end of this public session. Are we agreed on that?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Okay, matters arising. Got a little bit of, excuse me, an action point update. Gavin, are you going to let us hear about that?
Thanks, Chris. Yes. So yes, the response to the consultation on electricity infrastructure consenting in Scotland was agreed between the head of planning and the convener and vice convener, and sent back to the Scottish Government on that point from the last meeting.
Okay. Right. So declarations of interest, item number 4. Do any members wish to declare an interest on the items on the agenda today? Bill, I see you have your hand up.
I have a declaration of interest for item 5 on the agenda, as I am a near neighbour of the application.
Okay, and will you be joining or will you be leaving the?
I will be leaving the room, and would someone call me back into the meeting once item 5 is finished?
Okay, thank you very much. Don't see anything else. I'm not seeing anyone raising a hand in the room. So I will move now on to item 5. So Bill, if you would like to take yourself out just now, and we'll get back to you. So item number 5 is the application for detailed planning permission 2024/0226/DET for the erection of 3 houses at land northeast of Heather Cottage, Dalfaber Drive, Aviemore. And this is going to be introduced by Colin Bryans, our Senior Planning Officer from Development Management. And the officer's recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Colin, would you like to take us through this, please?
Certainly. Morning, everyone. Emma, if you could hop on to the next slide, that would be helpful. Thank you. Yeah, so in terms of the site location, this site is located within the Aviemore settlement boundary at the northeastern edge of the settlement. It sits just to the west of the Spey Valley Golf Course, if you're familiar with that location. And Emma, if you want to, pop on to the next slide. The proposal site itself comprises a single development plot within a wider residential development site that's been it's currently under construction and previously consented. I think it's 104 dwelling houses in total, and this constitutes one single plot within that wider consented development. Next slide, please, Emma. In terms of the proposal itself, it's for the erection of three-bedroom dwelling houses. So that will be in a terraced row, and it's on a site. That plot was previously consented for one single larger dwelling house. So instead of having the one dwelling house, this is a proposal for three smaller three-bedroom houses. Next slide, please, Emma. In terms of design and the materials proposed, the design is a continuity with the wider development, which is currently under construction. There's some completed units, there's some kind of units that are only being at various stages of construction across the wider site. And the materials proposed also are consistent with the consented development. So that's a white render, timber framed windows, composite doors, and kind of grey to black concrete roof tiles. So essentially it's the same design palette and same materials that are consented previously. Next slide, please, Emma. The site itself, it was a difficult one to get any decent photographs of. Essentially at the moment they're using it as a material set down area within the wider construction site. So there's not a huge amount to see as such. I do have some photographs later on that maybe that serve a purpose that I'll share whenever we're talking about certain issues. But at the moment, it's just a construction material set down area within that wider kind of construction site. Next slide, please, Emma. Moving on to the considerations. In terms of the principle of a residential development at a site, the site itself is located within the allocated H1 housing site within the local development plan. And also, you know, there is an existing consent for residential development on the wider site and on this plot in particular. So the principle of residential development is well established and acceptable. On the issue of affordable housing, there is no policy requirement for an affordable housing provision on site for proposals of less than 4 units. So there's no expectation here that they would build these units out as affordable, and indeed they're not proposing they would be affordable units. Across the wider consented development, the affordable housing provision and the affordable housing requirements have been met. So it's felt under these circumstances, there's no requirement for a commuted sum for affordable housing. Essentially going from one large house to 3 houses is seen as a positive in that respect, and 3-bedroom smaller units are more in line with the identified local need as well. So it's seen, even though the houses themselves aren't affordable by definition, it's seen as a positive move and a move in the right direction. In terms of design, we've touched on this previously, but the proposed scale and the design of the houses it provides continuity with the wider development. They're going to sit within that wider consented development very well, and the proposed materials are in keeping with the material palette that's already being used on the construction site. So in terms of how it sits within the townscape, it'll sit very comfortably. You know, it's not overdevelopment of the plot. 3 units in a terraced row again sits comfortably within the established townscape. On environmental issues, there are no specific environmental measures in terms of mitigation or betterment proposed here. However, wider issues relating to natural heritage and ecology were and have been addressed satisfactorily through the existing consent for the wider 104 unit housing site. And the scale and the nature of this proposal is such that it's not going to, we don't think it'll materially affect the conclusions drawn for the wider extant permission. So in these circumstances, it's deemed acceptable that there's no biodiversity net gain specific to the 3 houses. We did receive representation on this, raising matters from a neighbouring property. Paramount amongst those was the issue of privacy. This was specific to Heather Cottage, which sits directly opposite or just actually, Emma, if we can move on to the next slide, that'll be helpful. So this Heather Cottage you can see there with the red roof, and this photograph is taken from the corner of the site. So the representation raised the issue of overlooking from first floor level. The existing permission for the single house on the site included windows at first floor level, which would have overlooked the garden area of Heather Cottage as well. Emma, if we could pop back up to the slide 5, please. Sorry, next one down. Nope, other directions. Yes, here we go, elevations. You'll see there's windows at first floor level here as well. The difference being that there's more windows because there's 3 units essentially here as opposed to the one that previously it's been consented. So in that respect, there will be additional windows potentially overlooking the garden of Heather Cottage. Emma, if you could pop up to the site plan, one back, please. But what you will see here is the orientation of the properties doesn't look directly over Heather Cottage. Heather Cottage's garden is slightly to kind of the left as we're looking at it here. So the overlooking itself is, there was a degree of overlooking that's been deemed acceptable in the existing consent. That overlooking will remain to be in place with the new design as we're looking at it here. And it's felt that the increased amount of overlooking is minimal in that, you know, the garden was subject to overlooking, it'll still be subject to overlooking, but it's not, properties aren't moving any closer, the properties aren't any higher, the properties aren't orientated in such a way that they'll be directly looking upon Heather Cottage. So it's felt that in these circumstances, any increase to overlooking of the garden is felt to be acceptable. If you could head back down to the considerations tab, please, Emma. Another issue was risen in terms of the proximity of the development to the septic tank, which is related to Heather Cottage. The plot itself hasn't expanded beyond that which was previously consented, so the red line boundary for plot, what was the plot for the one single house, remains the same, so there is no encroachment upon the area of the septic tank. So there shouldn't be, and there won't be any increased impact on it. Slightly less formally, when I was on site, I was given the tour around by the site manager, and we were chatting, just talking through kind of the site and where it was and where the boundary was and all the rest of it. And he, unprompted, actually mentioned the septic tank. So it seems to me that they're well aware of it. So in terms of construction impacts, there shouldn't be any impact either. But fundamentally, the site itself hasn't changed in terms of its red line boundary from that which was previously consented. So any impacts on the septic tank shouldn't be any more impactful. Impacts on the local traffic network were also raised, along with potential issues with emergency services accessing these properties in terms of the road layout. We had a consultation response from the Highland Council Transport Planning Team, and they had no concerns either over the impacts of traffic from the 3 units going from 1 unit to 3 units. I didn't think it was going to be at a scale that was going to impact the local network, and equally so they were happy enough with the roads layout. They didn't think there were any issues in terms of emergency service access. So based on all of that, it's felt that the move from 1 approved house to 3 3-bedroom houses on this plot is deemed acceptable, and the recommendation is for approval.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Do any members have any questions of clarity for Colin? Mike, I've got you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of questions, if that's okay, Chris. My first question is round about the on the sewage or foul water drainage plans. So I note that all the pipes are the same size, where you would expect them to be variations of size. I was just wondering if Chris would like to comment on that.
So I had a conversation with, or an exchange of emails with the flooding and drainage team in Highland Council on this matter, and they advised that foul water drainage is out with their remit. It's subject to detailed consideration by Scottish Water. So if the committee determined to approve this application, the applicant will have to provide a detailed design of their foul water drainage to Scottish Water, and Scottish Water will then either accept or recommend amendments to that. And once it's acceptable, they would then adopt that infrastructure. So if the issue of the pipes being the same size is an issue technically, then it's within Scottish Water's remit to address that. The pipe size, although this application package includes a spec sheet on foul water drainage and pipe size, it's not going to be part of the formal approved design. That will be subject to, it sits within Scottish Water's remit to approve that.
Okay, thank you. Is it okay to ask my second question?
Yes, okay, go ahead. Mark.
Okay, thank you. It's about phosphate mitigation measures. Are they included within the overall conditions, or is that again a Scottish Water or SEPA issue?
Oh, sorry, I didn't quite catch that. What mitigation measures?
Phosphate mitigation from the septic tanks. Are they taken into consideration for by SEPA, I would imagine, or are they conditional by SEPA?
They would be. That sits within SEPA's remit, not within the remit of the planning.
Gavin, would you want to come in there?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, Mike. So the foul that's all dealt with under the foul water drainage, which is connecting to Scottish Water's network, and the Scottish Water are obviously regulated at their the wastewater station, which is part of Aviemore anyway. So the wastewater is pumped to that treatment plant, and then the phosphate discharge is regulated by SEPA from that point on. So it's not, whilst there's a septic tank for a neighbouring property, there aren't septic tanks associated with this development.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I'm not seeing anything online or in the room. So with no speakers today, so can we move into the discussion phase? Do any members wish to raise anything? Mike?
Yeah, it was just, is it possible to add as an informative the use of a life belt around the SUDs?
Gavin, would you like to come in?
Thanks. Yeah, Mike. This connects into the wider development, and it's SUDs, so there is no SUDs as part of this development itself. So
okay, that's fine then. That's fine. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So, any other further points or questions?
Chris, you've got one from the room. Eleanor.
Oh, Eleanor. Yes, Eleanor, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Just a question on the design. In the papers, it said it fits with the locality. Is there existing houses there as part of the wider development, and are they of that same design that we saw the picture of?
Yes, and yes, to answer it in short. There may not be, I can't remember if there were terraced units identical to these ones, but there are a variety of house style or variety of house types, but with a continuity of materials and design spec across them. So semi-detached and detached units all look very similar to the design we have proposed here. The only difference being that they're bigger and, maybe, more windows and that type of thing, but the materials are exactly the same, and architecturally the style is the same as well.
Yeah, I know design's a objective thing, but personally I'd be disappointed with that design. But I know it's objective, but
Chris, you have one more from the room, Lauren.
Hi, yeah, I agree with that, Eleanor, actually. Just Colin, I was wondering if you could just talk me through, the parking situation, just to make sure that the Community Council and the residents' concerns have definitely been addressed, because there is genuine concern about emergency vehicles and the additional car parking spaces, with it being obviously going from 1 to 3. So could you just talk me through that one more time, so I definitely get it.
Emma, could you go to the site plan slide, please? So you'll see there that it's off-street parking, essentially. The provision in the front garden there for each of the units. In terms of vehicular access, I'm not a technical expert on swept path analysis personally, which is why we consult with those experts. But although these concerns or thoughts have been raised by the Community Council in consultation with the transport planning team, the experts at Highland Council, they had no concerns with regards to that. So the roads layout here, excuse me, hasn't actually changed from that which was approved in the previous development. It's only the houses on site. So, if we're assuming that everything was hunky-dory with the previously consented development in terms of, nothing has changed there, but the transport planning team at Highland Council did look at it afresh and they have no issues with it currently.
Yeah, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this, because there, with three separate houses, you have 3 separate pairs of guests. So with one house, you've got, maybe one family being visited, but there's potentially 3 separate families. Well, 3 separate families with 3 separate visitors. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that, if I'm honest.
Chris, you're on mute if you're trying to talk.
Okay, thank you very much, Lauren. With those comments in mind, are committee members content to take forward the officer's recommendation and approve the application?
Agreed.
Agreed, yes. Yeah, okay. Right, okay, well, in that case, the application 2024/0226 DET, erection of 3 houses, land northeast of Heather Cottage, Dalfaber Drive, Aviemore, has been approved. Okay, so we'll move now on to item number 6, and this is an application for detailed planning permission.
We need to call Bill back in.
Oh yes, we'll get Bill, sorry, before we move on.
Yeah, we're just giving him a quick phone now. Yeah.
Bill, can you hear us okay?
I can indeed, thank you.
Right, thank you, Bill. Okay, so now we move on to item 6, application for detailed plan permission 2024/0297/DET, change of house types, plots 49 to 50 and 53 to 60, the repositioning of plots 51 and 52 at land between Perth Road and Station Road, Newtonmore, introduced by Catherine, our planning officer from Development Management, and the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. And so, Catherine, would you like to take us through the presentation, please?
Thank you, convener. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. This is an application for essentially a remix of the houses on phase 1 of this scheme at Newtonmore. Could I get the next slide, please, Emma? The site lies just on the southern edge of Newtonmore, as outlined in red, and to the east of the main road heading south to Perth. To the south of the site is a little sort of path called the Coffin Road, and to the north is the housing, existing housing development. There's the special area of conservation, the River Spey, lies some distance to the south. If I can get the next slide, please, Emma. This site, this shows that the site in its context with the aerial image showing there's a cafe and parking area, a car lorry park to the west of the Perth Road there, and this site is part of a larger housing development, consented housing development. It forms part of phase 1 of that consented development and is part of a larger designated housing site in Newtonmore, at the south end of Newtonmore. It's an agricultural, well, it was an agricultural land. It's a clear development site now. If I can get the next slide, please, Emma. This is the approved phasing plan for the site, which gives you a little bit more of the context. The site is the part of that pink area at the south. It's the right-hand side, hope I've got this right, the right-hand side of the site, furthest away from the road, is the 12 plots that we're dealing with at the moment. And then the area between that 12 plots and Perth Road is the remainder of that phase. Then we've got phase 2 is the yellow coloured one, and phase 3 is the blue coloured one. This was 81 houses consented in 2007. The phasing is sort of, the infrastructure is going in, started to go in for phase 1 that we're dealing with, including the scraping for the SADS pond at the south of the site. So work's ongoing, and it's ongoing in the next phase as well, where some houses have been built. So development has started on this site, and it's a very old consent, but it was kept live by various starts on site and consenting of planning conditions. So that's the sort of context of it, designated land and existing consent. If I can get the next slide, please, Emma. This is the layout of it, the proposed layout, and it's 12 units, 6 pairs of semi-detached houses, all affordable houses for a social landlord, the Highland Housing Alliance and Highland Council. This phase is actually the affordable housing phase for the overall development. So the original phase 1 was 20 units in total, and this is 12 of these units. They were previously always 12 units here, but they were a different mixture of house sizes. So the number of houses hasn't changed. It's just that they're now 3-bedroomed instead of 2-bedroomed. And the remainder of this 20 house phase is the ones you can see sort of under the grey area to the left of the slide, and that's the remaining single-storey development, largely 1-bedroomed houses there. So it's part of this affordable site as part of the wider site in Newtonmore. If we can get the next slide, please, Emma. This is a section showing the houses. They're set in a kind of row, offset some of them from the internal access road that's being formed, following some discussions with the applicants and comments from the Community Council about the slightly bland nature of the houses. They were all the same colour and limited features on them. We got some changes to the finishes, the fenestration, etc. And so there's more variety in a colour of Harling. There's some that are sort of beige and some that are white, and different colours of composite cladding on them. Some are blue and some are grey. The roofs of the houses are 2 different shades of grey as well, to introduce a bit of variety. The site is largely level, so there's very limited changes to the ground levels. See, Councillor Lobban had his hand up. Don't know.
Yeah, sorry, convener, but I note the mention of Highland Council in this application already in Catherine's presentation. So it probably would be appropriate then that I declare an interest in this item and leave immediately.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Bill. And we'll call you back in before the end.
Yeah, the application is by Talis, are the agents, but the houses are for, as I understand it, for Highland Council and Highland Housing Alliance. So that wasn't maybe clear on the application forms, but that's my understanding anyway. Next slide, please, Emma. This is to illustrate the visualizations the applicant has prepared to just to show how the houses will look on a 3D sort of element. So that's the houses that we're considering, the 2-storey ones on the top slide there, the 2-storey ones on the right-hand side, and the existing single-storey ones on the left-hand side of the little map that of the visualisation they've done are those that are already consented, and they don't need to change those house types. This application, this remix, has come about because there was a change in social landlord. It was previously, I understand, Caledonia Housing Association, and now it's changed to the Highland Council and the Highland Housing Alliance, and they wanted to change the house types and sizes to meet their needs. So but the remainder of the site, which will be built by which will be for Highland Council, is unchanged. So that's just some visualisations to just show how it sits in its wider context of what's been consented there, what the overall development will look like in this phase. Next slide, please, Emma. This slide is really to try and show, this is from their design statement, to kind of show the changes compared to what was consented in the first place and what they're wanting to change it to now. So the left-hand slide on the top shows what the consented visualisation was, which you'll see is some terraced, some two-storey and one single-storey block in the middle of it. So there was a wee bit of variety in roof heights there. There were semi-detached blocks and terraced blocks of two-storey and then single-storey in the middle, with a little communal car parking area as well. And now it's all two-storey houses sort of set back from the road with some hedging at the front. The slide on the right-hand side also shows the comparison of the layout, and again showing the same thing, that we've got now a row of houses where there was maybe some variation in terms of the communal car parking area, but there was always going to be two-storey housing in this development. If I can get the next slide now, please, Emma. This is the landscape scheme. We've asked them for a landscape scheme, and they've shown just how they're going to create a little bit. There's been a wee bit of loss of landscaping around the communal car parking area, but they've increased the amount of hedging. They've got hedging along the south and north boundaries, and they're putting bits of hedging along in the front gardens. The front gardens are all open plan. And then they've also done some to the south of the site, in the very bottom of the site there's the SADS pond that was approved for the overall development. This development will connect into that SADS pond, and they're proposing some enhanced wildflower planting in that area, and 2 bird boxes as well, as sort of, I suppose, biodiversity enhancements or mitigation for any loss of planting from the previous scheme. The access will be at taking off the existing road layout that's already been approved, but there will all be individual accesses into each plot, no communal parking, and there'll be electric vehicle charging in each plot as well. If I can get the next slide now, Emma, please. This is just showing as a building site, effectively. That's from the Coffin Road, standing on the Coffin Road. The darker ground at the front would be where the SADS pond and the planting's going in there. Then the site is to the right-hand side of the slide here, where the timber screen fence is. They've got a kind of site office type thing, and that would be where the single-storey houses are going. And the right-hand side is where our two-storey development that we're dealing with. And you can see in the distance the houses that are under construction in phase 2 just now. And then you can see on the right-hand side the existing houses within trees there. If I can get the next slide, please. This is a wee bit closer from the cafe opposite, looking towards where the houses are being built in phase 2, and you'll see that they are two-storey as well. Next slide, please, Emma. And that's just going back into Newton Moor, the footpath going along the front of the overall site, and you've got an access. There's 2 accesses coming in off, there will be 2 accesses coming in off Perth Road. That's the main road there. Next slide, please, Emma. And that's on this, looking from the road, looking across the site, southern towards the hills. Just again, it's just a building site at the moment, but you can see that work has started on the infrastructure. Next slide, please, Emma. And that's just showing that the housing that's been built to date on phase 1. Again, it's a bit like calling it the last application, similar kind of finish. It's composite cladding rather, Harling and roof tiles. Next slide, please. Now, the principle of these are the main issues. The principle of development is well established. We've got it's a designated housing site. It's got a planning consent, original planning consent for 80 houses on the wider side. On this particular phase, there was a planning consent back in 2018 for they changed the house types on this affordable part. So that was the first change in house types. And now this current application is looking to amend that one. That's the one that I showed in the comparison. That was what we approved in 2018. The principles well established and welcomed the delivery of affordable housing in Newton Moor. The design and layout, we consider that with the amendments they've done in terms of finishes, the massing and scale is similar to elsewhere on the development. There has been the loss of change in terms of variety from one single story block in the middle and the rest being 2-story, but we feel that overall that's acceptable. And when you see it in the context of phase 1 itself. So overall we think that's acceptable. The servicing, there's no changes to the servicing really from the previous applications. The technical consultees, flood risk management, roads, Scottish Water, they're all happy with it. The foul drainage will connect into Scottish Water supplies, and the surface water drainage will be soakaways within the gardens for the road rainwater from the roofs, but rainwater from the roads will connect to the previously approved SAD scheme that I showed you. The pond. When I say pond, it's an attenuation facility rather than a pond. So the servicing's okay. The environmental impacts, we're satisfied that the landscaping as proposed is acceptable, that it fits in with the rest of the scheme, and we've got a little bit of biodiversity enhancement with the bird boxes and the additional hedging that they're proposing. There is no impact in terms of any designated sites in the area. There was no requirement for a habitat regulation appraisal in this instance. The Community Council, as you'll have seen, there's an appendix. The Community Council have objected to this application. They had concerns about the design, which we feel have been addressed. They also had concerns about the move from 2 to 3 bedroomed houses, felt that this wasn't what's needed by the community. Now, the housing officer, the Housing Service of Highland Council have been consulted as the appropriate consultee, and they're satisfied that there is a need for this type of housing in Newton Moor. And furthermore, the changes come about in order to meet the requirements of the housing providers who have confirmed the need and the desire for applicants for this type of housing, and that's covered in our report. So we don't think there's a particular issue there. There was a final issue that the Community Council were concerned that the housing may be, because it was by Highland Council, that it may be used to house people out with the Badenoch area. Now, that is not a land use planning concern, but it's also the housing is allocated according to need, obviously. So in terms of affordable housing delivery, we believe that this is going to deliver affordable housing that will meet the needs of this scheme. There is a priority purchase area was previously agreed on the rest of the scheme as well, but that's different for local residents. But it will deliver the affordable housing for this scheme, and that the work has started on site. So overall, we feel that this development is welcomed. We feel that the detail of the design is appropriate now, and subject to conditions, we recommend approval of the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Do we have any questions of clarity for Catherine? Mike?
Yeah, it's a question about, I know that in the landscape plans, they go into a great deal of granular detail about what's going to be planted, etc. But unfortunately, it kind of stops when it gets to the wildflower seed mix. And I'm just wondering if Catherine could give us some additional details on whether that is what is going to be used will be compatible with what's the environmental conditions.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we did look into that, the type of species that are going to be used for the wildflower mix. We discussed it with one of the conservation officers. The applicants have clarified, and they do have some notes on the landscape scheme, but they've clarified that the seeds will be sourced from a local provider, and they'll be of local provenance. There's Scotia seeds range that's been used widely in other developments, but it's also that it is a Highland mix that they're using, and our conservation officer has looked at that and considers that it is appropriate for the particular site. So yes, we are satisfied with that.
Okay, thank you. Yep, thank you.
Right, I've got Anne online.
Thank you and good morning. You mentioned bird boxes going up, and I've got those that know me, and and it's just an interest in Swifts. Can we ask for Swift boxes? And I'm not talking just about one, because a colony of Swifts needs more than one Swift box. But can we ask for Swift boxes to be attached to each property?
Catherine?
The applicants, when the agents, when they put forward the idea of, and I have to confess, I'm not an expert in this field, but when they put forward the suggestion that they would put bird boxes in the area to the south, the SADS area to the south, they felt this was a better place for the bird boxes because they'd be less disturbed. Swift boxes in the houses doesn't seem to me an unreasonable request if it's felt that it's a biodiversity enhancement, but I haven't discussed that with the applicants at all, the requirement for it, and it wasn't raised by any of when I discussed it with the conservation officers. I don't know if, presumably from what they've said, from what their ecologists have said, they feel that the bird boxes would be more used in the position that they've suggested, and that was the ecologist that recommended it. But we didn't discuss Swift boxes within the fabric of the building, and I don't know whether it might be something as an informative rather than a condition, in that it's potentially not something that's required by this application, but it would be maybe something that we could suggest to them in an informative that might be a nice thing for them to do. I don't know if Gavin wants to add anything to that.
And we can discuss that again with the applicants. I'm just aware that often Swift boxes are put on quite tall buildings, and also they need to be not in full sun, so they need to be in the right location so that they don't get very hot in the summer. So there may not be as many locations on these buildings for Swift boxes, which is possibly why the applicant's ecologist didn't suggest that in the first place. But certainly we can go back to them and suggest that they provide, they're explicit on why the bird boxes that they're proposing are the appropriate ones when they come back to us with that detail.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Do we have anyone else in the room? I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry,
yeah. Duncan.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just, for clarity, I'm just looking at is it number 9 there. It's a decrease of an increase of 3 bedrooms to 12 units and a decrease of 2 bedrooms to 4. So 10 more 3 bedrooms and 10 fewer 2 bedrooms. Are we content that is like affordable housing with that kind of increase and that kind of decrease of the two?
So that's because Highland Housing Alliance and the council know that they've got people looking for either social rented housing or mid-market rent housing at that size of building. So that's the demand that they've got for that, not for the 2 bedroom at this point in time. Now, it might be that at some other point in time, a further phase of development of the affordable housing, there may be a different demand in that area, but that's what they know they've got just now and over the next few years. So that's intended to react to the demand that's there just now.
Okay.
Yeah,
are you happy with that, Duncan?
Sorry,
Catherine.
If I could maybe just add to that, that the house that my understanding is that the reason that he sometimes would wish slightly bigger houses is because if they've children, they've got to have separate bedrooms for them depending on their age. And also Highland Housing Alliance had said in some comments to us that they like to have space for home working as well. So that there is a demand in their view for 3 bedroomed houses.
Okay.
Chris, you have Eleanor in the room.
Eleanor, thank you.
I'm really happy to see that mix increased in the 3 bedroom size, because I think all too often we cater for 1 and 2 bedroom houses, which leaves families in a really difficult position when their family grows. They've got nowhere to grow you know, nowhere to go. So I think that's really good to see that.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Eleanor. Do we have anyone else in the room? No. Okay. So we can go to the discussion phase. So does anyone want to raise anything there? Mike?
Yeah, just a couple of things, and hopefully I got the SUDS right this morning. But again, I mentioned about the SUDS and life belts, but the other one is about as an informative, rather than planting beech hedging, would it be possible to include hornbeam as well as a consideration?
On the type, sorry, on the type of planting, we did mention this to the agents, whether they would be willing to use hornbeam as well as beech, and they don't have any strong views on it, but the reason that we're using beech was that they've used beech throughout the rest of the development, so it was a sort of consistency thing across the development, which was maybe quite a good idea too. But I don't think they don't have any opposition to the idea of it. So I guess if members would like them to include hornbeam as well as beech, then we can add it as an informative. It's not something that we could insist on, given the type of development and what's been approved elsewhere. The beech throughout the site anyway, if there was a reason why the members wish to have the hornbeam. I think you mentioned the life belt again for the SADS pond. It's not actually, I keep using the term pond, it's an attenuation feature, and as I understand it from looking at the previous applications and from talking to the applicants, it's not going to be particularly water filled, and it's not part of, the same as the one in Dolfaber that we spoke about a little while ago, it's not part of this application, but if you wished it to be added as an informative that they consider it, then I guess we could. I don't know if that would, if there's a particular reason.
Yeah, I think from what you've just said, Catherine, with regard to the life belt, yeah, I'm fine with that, and I'm also fine just to leave it open-ended to the developer to decide. But it was just a suggestion rather than using beech, maybe a bit of variety. But yeah, I'm happy either way. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Catherine. Do you have any other comments from the room?
None.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Right, so are committee members content to take forward the officer's recommendation and approve this application?
Agree.
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay, agreed. Oh, Catherine, you want to come back in there?
Question. Sorry, just a small question. We'll be issuing the decision next week. So we've to an informative about the Swifts.
Yeah.
The Swift boxes, yes, and the hornbeam. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you for
clarifying. Thank you, Catherine. Right. So with that, the application for detailed plan permission 2024 0297 DET, the change of house types at plot 49 to 50, 53 to 60, and the repositioning of plots 51, 52 at the land at Perth Road and Station Road, Newton Moor, has been approved. Okay, so we'll move on now. Bill, can we have Bill back in? Bill, can you hear us okay?
I can indeed, thank you.
Right, okay, so we'll move on to item 7, AOCB. We've nothing from the officers. Do we have anything from any of the members? I'm not seeing anything online, and I'm not seeing any hands in the room. So in that case, well, that's the end of the public part of the Planning Committee meeting. We will now move on to consider the minute of the confidential session of the 30th of December 2024 in a closed session. So for any members of the public, the date of our next meeting will be 14th of March 2025. Can we now turn off the live stream of the meeting?